Hi, Ian. How are you doing?
I'm all right. I'm all right.
Well, good to see you. Look, I know you're busy and you can't make it on the show tomorrow. But I'd like to talk to you about what was talked about on the show last week. We did a newspaper review with John Dunn. Sort of went a bit ballistic, to say the least. And this front page of the Morning Star: TUC vowed to fight strike-breaking Tories in courts. He was suggesting that this is just a ridiculous way to go about it. You'll never beat those lot in the courts. You've got to be a bit more militant than that. It is the TUC just sort of doing what it thinks looks goodish, but not actually fighting the fight. I mean, it looks like lots of unions are protesting and really going to the limits to fight for their members. But is the TUC sticking up for the unions?
I mean, in all honesty, I mean, we're part of that attack on the government through the courts. We are one of the 11 unions that's taken the government to court for failing to consult because they've breached the law in relation to the trade unions that was set in 1973. Obviously, it goes against what the government set up through the ILO in 1919. So as far as we're concerned, we want to challenge them legally because we think it's important. But obviously, we're very, very clear, as trade unions, that if an employer was to bring agency workers in for covering if we had an industrial dispute, in our case, we would ratchet that strike, and probably, if it was a national company, start to ballot our members on a national basis and take all of our members out on strike. We think the idea that you bring agency workers in causes conflict on the floor. I mean, in our industry, we do use agency workers to supplement when we have low attendance in the workplace or because there's new machinery brought in. And obviously, there will be a conflict, I would imagine, if people say going through wage negotiations and they bring in agency workers because they've got a new machine being put in and they need to supplement their core staff. So I think it's an ill thought out idea. I think it's headline grabbing. I think it is right for unions to contest the legal route, as well as the industrial route too. I don't think we should rule anything out. And I do think if we're failing the courts, I don't think we should rely on the courts. I think we should, when we're at the TUC conference, be seriously discussing about this cost of living crisis, about the attacks on our freedoms. And again, I've just mentioned today, obviously Julian Assange and the Westminster, the surround of Westminster, that's about shutting freedom of speech down. That's about, the rights of journalists to report on the truth. And we've seen, over the last few days, how the government's now controlled, if you want, by these focus groups and these invisible bodies behind the scene. And I think it's very, very important, that at that TUC conference, we start to organise across all of the trade unions to move towards, if necessary, a general strike.
I mean, the TUC. The other thing that's come out yesterday was that Francis O'Grady is being given a peerage by Keir Starmer, which to me doesn't look very good, considering what he's been saying about picket lines. I mean, should she really be accepting that? I know we have there's good reason to have people who are in the House of Lords like Prem Sickers in there, and there's others, but it doesn't seem, it seems like a kind of gift that you get when you've done a bit of good service for not really militant stuff. Do you know what I mean? If she was really rocking the boat, they wouldn't give her a peerage, would they?
No, I mean, obviously they never gave Scargill one, did they? For because he would never have took it. But two most importantly, I mean, trade unions and you know, the people get elected into position of trade unions, they're put there by the members to fight on their behalf, not secure a position when they're allegedly retiring. You know, we can't fight for people to be, you know, have a decent pension if the people who are leading those fights then go off to earn additional income by sitting in the House of Lords. I think the idea that trade union leaders take up position in the House of Lords is wrong. I mean, I think the House of Lords is wrong anyway, and we need to abolish it. I mean, for me, you know, obviously there's herself and there's Prentice that I believe's in that honours list by Keir Starmer. It's no surprise to see him putting those people forward. You know, from our perspective,
I mean, you got Tom Watson in there, Ruth Smith, and then, you know, Francis OGradys in there. I mean, it's like
it's like reward for helping bring down Jeremy Corbyn and the potential of a Labour government, isn't it? That's what it's like. I mean, and it's definitely rubbing salt in open wounds. I mean, I think the idea that you know, the House of Lords exists in the 21st century is just wrong anyway.
But I mean, on a more general note, I mean, the TUC has not got a very good reputation, has it? I mean, from like the general strike through the miners' strike. You know, do you think the TUC could do more to improve its reputation with activists, union people on the ground? It just seems like they seem to just let themselves down. I don't know. What's your view on that?
I always get reminded that the TUC is a decision-making body of the trade union movement that has all of those general secretaries from all of those trade unions that give those fantastic speeches and organise stuff. You know, they organise stuff, but yet it seems to be muted when it comes to actually leading, which is what we need at the moment. We need a strong, solid working class that has a body called the TUC. And for me, a trade union congress should be creating the opportunity, you know, for the labour movement to fight back. And it seems to be individual unions, individual community organisations, rather than the collective body of the TUC. I think, you know, sometimes you look at the TUC and you question its role, because it seems to be more about working, you know, and I understand there's a need to work with government, but it seems to be more about pacifying and working with government than it does in representing working people. And I think, unfortunately, whether they're TUC like it or not, that's how many trade unionists perceive them.
And I mean, you're working on, you're part of Organise now, trying to get more workplaces unionised. I mean, shouldn't that be the TUC's bag? I mean, shouldn't the TUC be going out there trying to recruit more people into unions and stuff like that?
I mean, to be fair to the TUC on that core, I mean, obviously they do an awful lot of training of reps, and they do support organising campaigns. I mean, you know, after a bit of an issue at the beginning, you know, the support we got from the TUC in relation to the McStrike and the Spoon strike was fantastic. What the TUC have done with us since, in supporting our organising ability is, you know, helping us, you know, put a online joining form, for example. Those have been very, very positive. I think the issue comes more on the politics side, and sometimes the decisions not to fight when you know, because obviously they're trying to, what they're trying to do is appease, you know, the so-called right-wing trade union. I don't know how you get right-wing trade unionists, but appease right-wing trade unionists, and so they can't be too militant. But the thing is, we're in the fight for survival of the trade union movement. If it's to survive, then we have to be prepared to fight. And that means having to rock the boat and having to be unpopular, you know, in government offices and government departments, because they don't like us anyway. I mean, the Daily Mail's never going to write a positive story about trade unions. You know, the Sun, you know, is only going to pacify some trade unionist readers when it feels it's necessary. You know, the reality is these people are not on our side, and we have to be prepared to actually organise to defend working people, to defend our class, because the Labour Party's not going to do it. The Labour Party, as we've seen, won't stand on picket lines. It sacks shadow cabinet ministers who go along to picket lines. And despite everything that's said about the current situation in the polls, people aren't going to Labour because they suddenly think Keir Starmer is electable. It's just that the Tories are so unelectable that people have gone, oh, well, we're just going to have to go and vote for Keir Starmer. I mean, you know, that isn't how democracy should work. Democracy should be about, I'm inspired to go out and vote because I think that these politicians can make a difference to my life. And, you know, I want to see change, because we all want to end homelessness. We all want to see people being able to afford to eat. We don't want people, you know, struggling in insecurity, you know. But the reality is that, you know, the trade union movement and its body, the TUC, has to be the organisation that steps up and says, we will organise across our communities. We will organise working class people. We will make sure that that fight is taken to the government, regardless of the colour. I mean, because, you know, I've run into some issues where, you know, it becomes very difficult to get support from the TUC, for example, if we're calling out Keir Starmer. Well, I think during COVID, his actions were appalling. Our members thought his actions were appalling. So as far as we're concerned in relation to Keir Starmer and his Labour Party, he didn't look out for our interests. He didn't defend our class, and he doesn't represent the change that we so desperately need in our communities and in our country.